This is Amir Anzur, and I've got a special guest, Ahmed Khan, with us today. He is the guru of startups in the world of Pakistan. He started Daraz.pk, which was the equivalent of Amazon in Pakistan about 10 years ago. That was a part of Rocket Internet. If you guys have heard of Rocket Internet, it's the leading startup incubator in Europe. And then he's also founded Cheat.pk, which is the equivalent of Deliveroo, or you can say Uber Eats in Pakistan as well. We're going to ask him about his journey, and then the state of startups in Pakistan, what he sees as the difference in them. He's raised tens of millions of dollars for his startups. So we're going to ask him about his journey, and I'm going to let him do most of the talking because he's the guru. So Ahmed, just tell us your background and then how you got started in the startup world and then your journeys.
Wow, thank you very much. It's a great pleasure to be here and talk to people and just it's always a great forum to sort of share the journey, get feedback and try to understand what's going to happen next, right? Because your guess is as good as mine, right? We've done these fantastic things in Pakistan and in the region, but there's always this uncertainty about what's happening next and what to expect. But anyway, so look, my journey has been fairly simple. What I like to refer to it as is it's been a non-linear journey. So it's not like I joined a company and I spent 20 years of my career there and then did something else. I've always been fascinated by doing different things and doing things that other people have not done before, right? For whatever reason. So I studied computer science. I never wanted to be an engineer, so I went into sort of infrastructure management to learned more about the management side. We have a family tech business that is textile manufacturing. Never trained for it, but landed up doing it. Did my MPhil in something called industrial management, but ended up doing my thesis more around how to optimize public policy implementation, which is again which fascinated me at the time. Became a strategy consultant at McKinsey. After sort of a degree in engineering. Came back to the family business, and then in 2012 was sort of the real tipping point moment where Rocket Internet were coming to Pakistan, and they said, "Look, we want to do e-commerce in Pakistan. What's your view on it? Would you like to help us launch it?" So started Daraz, which today it is the sort of largest e-commerce player in Pakistan. It's now owned by the Alibaba Group. 2 years in, sort of the thinking was that look, for e-commerce to do really well in Pakistan, there are two things that are fundamentally missing. One is logistics, because we just don't have the infrastructure, and two is payments. Again, for various reasons, it's a cash-based economy. People don't like to be documented, and left Rocket Internet to start a company that would essentially solve these two big problems: logistics and payments. And that's sort of the birth of Cheetah, where nowadays people call it quick commerce. Back in the day, we called it now commerce, right? Okay, whatever you want delivered in 30 to 45 minutes, whether it's food, whether it's grocery, whether it's your cell phone, et cetera, et cetera. And on the back of that, we launched another company called Swift, which is sort of your more traditional tech up logistics COD play, right? And yeah, so that's sort of been the journey, from over the last 20 plus years, doing random things, which sort of all interconnected and built a skill base and sort of a network and a knowledge base that has brought me here, where I can talk about these things with some degree of humility and understanding of what has happened. Well, yeah, I hope that makes sense.
Great. So let's start with Daraz, right? So that was a company that you co-founded in 10 odd years ago. What was the vision then, and what has it turned out to be, and what's the difference? Like, what can you think in 10 years ago, what you guys were thinking, and now where it is?
So yeah, that's very interesting, right? So Daraz was set up to be two things, right? One, we wanted to be the Zappos of Pakistan. We actually started two companies. One was called Asmalo, one was called Daraz. Asmalo was going to be the Amazon. Zappos was supposed to be Daraz was supposed to be the Zappos. pretty early on, we
So
decided
just
that,
explain to people, Zappos was the food, the shoe
the
retailer.
fashion
Okay.
retailer, right? So purely in the apparel scene, right? Um, so then I think pretty quickly the realization was you don't need two separate companies. There's no need for, in frontier markets like Pakistan, there's no need to do two separate players. You can do one aggregated play where you can have multiple verticals and multiple products and categories. So that's where we started, right? The idea was to be a full logistics player where we would own the warehousing. We would, sort of develop a delivery network around it, and sort of manage the entire end-to-end process. And if vendors want to sell, we'd have a secondary marketplace as well. But the idea was, to primarily be sort of the Amazon where you own the transaction and you own the customer. So that was the vision back then, right? And lo and behold, right? So that was 2012. So 11 odd years on, I think we sort of held true to the vision. Built warehouses all over the country, huge warehouses. Developed a logistics and delivery fleet. Daraz Express and all of that, and yeah, in practically every category, it looks more like Alibaba or Taobao now than it does, Amazon. But I think it's a fair comparison. The sort of new thing that they've gotten into, which was completely not thought of, is this content streaming. Like so the World Cup was streamed on the Daraz app, right? So not only are they getting into have they gotten into every category conceivable, but they've also started getting into sort of content and distribution of content. And when I say content, I mean media content, right? So that's the other thing. The other thing, I guess, we could never have this whole Alibaba transaction was of course the idea was always to exit, but that such a big player would come and take over. So now it's run by a very profitable group who can and who have deep expertise, and not by founders who are smart people and trying to figure stuff out, right? So and then along with it, the other interesting thing that happened was Alibaba also, or Ant Financials, also invested in EasyPesa, and they created a wallet and an app vertical for financial transactions, right? That is the other business I was talking about, right? That Chique wanted to get into. So that's the interesting thing, right? So these things, you come up with a plan. If you have the right resources and the right team, you can execute it. But then you get new ideas, and you sort of evolve, and if you're agile enough, then you can turn it into something even better than what you thought of.
But do you think, in your experience with startups, do you think any of these companies could have gotten as big if they were bootstrapped rather than had this like backing of Rocket Internet or Alibaba, etc.? Do you think they
Yeah,
could?
look, there's some good examples of companies that fundamentally bootstrap as well. There's Telemart, there's ShopHive. They've gotten to a reasonable scale, and they're profitable, right? Whereas so here's the difference between the two, right? You can run something as a traditional business where where the first unit you sell is going to be positive unit economics, and is going to start making you money, or you can build it like these tech startups do, where so the first 5 years are going to be this massive burn where you achieve scale and build your infrastructure and you build your tech, and then you start making it profitable, right? That's what Amazon followed. That's what Uber followed, right? You build for this massive scale by raising external money. So not to say one model is better than the other. It's just different strategies and different ways that people go about building businesses. Um, the advantage of the tech-based businesses, it's a valuation business, right? So to flip it, you need that hyper scale, so you can, because your exit is a valuation. The other businesses are more cash flow businesses, where you think about it and you say, look, I want to make money and I want to eat off this business every month, every year, versus it's not something I want to flip and sell very, very quickly, right? So um, yeah, different thinking. Not necessarily one is better than the other. It's just your appetite for risk, and also your access to capital, and sort of the way you build your operating model.
And I suppose if you're raising money, like you had good brands on your CV. Like you went to Lum's University, then Cambridge, and then McKinsey. And so someone like you is more investable than a typical Pakistani that is like just out of college or university. Would you say that really helps in the fundraising and getting investment field?
Yeah, look, it definitely does, right? Because at the time when we raised money, Pakistan was not on anyone's radar, right? So literally, you know, to be brutally honest, right? Even Rocket Internet, the way they found someone like me was they went to LinkedIn and they said, okay, sort by Pakistan, and someone who worked at McKinsey, and maybe four people showed up, right? So they had a choice between us for whoever the other three were, right, or something like that. Um, so definitely it puts you at the top of the pack in terms of visibility, but it's not to say that this profile is the only one that is investable. The market has evolved significantly. Back then there were no local VCs. There was no one who understood the market. There was no one who had access to the network. There was no incubator. There was no accelerator. Now, if you're smart and you have a good idea and you're able to sort of build a prototype or an MVP, as they call it, you can get in front of an investor at all these tech startup events, you know, at at one of these competitions, or you can get access even to accelerators abroad, like Y Combinator and stuff. People from Pakistan are now pitching to that crowd as well. So I think there's been some democratization and sort of leveling of the playing field. But yeah, back then it was very, very difficult.
And then how did you come up with the idea for Cheetah? What is it, and what have you guys done with it?
So the idea for Cheetah was very simple, right? That we wanted to build a logistics layer, which is warehousing, which is delivery, returns, and the tech that goes around it, right? And
So
then
is this
and then
like if I was in the UK or US, is this like fulfillment by Amazon, would you say? For those that are not in
so
Pakistan. So
so the idea is to build that logistics layer, and then you can tag any vertical on top of it that you want. So you can tag, existing players like an Amazon, or you can say, okay, look, I've got these whatever 200 riders who are there who can deliver my product. I want to deliver food. You get all the restaurants on board, and you build a restaurant vertical. You say, I want to do personal care. You get all these makeup brands and all of them on board, and you start delivering and you start doing those. So you literally go vertical by vertical, and you start building like a full e-commerce offering. But the underlying concept is the layer of logistics that you've built, and that is accessible only to you. And the other thing that we wanted to do was we wanted to do this 30 to 60 minutes delivery time, right? We wanted to invest heavily in what we call now commerce, and which is now called quick commerce. So that's how we thought about it. So the first vertical we did was food, because food is the one thing that you need immediately, right? When you order food, you're not thinking, okay, it can come in 2 days or it can come tomorrow. So we wanted to train everyone on food, and then the next vertical we did was groceries, right? Again, something that you like to get more or less immediately. So that's how we're building Cheetah out, right? We're gonna go vertical by vertical, starting with the ones that have sort of the highest share of wallet, and the ones that have the most stickiness, right? And of course, where we can make some margin as well. So that's sort of the thinking about what we're trying to do with Cheetah.
and if you do something like Cheetah, did you start in, let's say, one city or one neighborhood, and how do you scale that up? Like how do you spread it? And
So that's the thing, right? When you sort of build a more localized business, whether it's teched up or not, because we started with food, right? So no one sitting in Karachi is going to order, Zakir Tikka from Lahore, right? They'll get their local option. So just like Uber, like if you're sitting in Islamabad, you're not going to order your Uber from Quetta, right? It has to be a city-based launch. So yes, so these businesses are not just they're very, very city-based. So you need an ops team, and you need, well, you need your office or your HQ overhead somewhere, and that you can decide. But the ops and customer acquisition are always sort of more localized and city-based. So that's how we did it, right? We started with Lahore, we went to Islamabad, we tried Karachi, And Swift obviously is the other example, right? Again, it has to be a city by city launch because you just have to build those ops locally and manage it locally.
Then how do you do the marketing? Is it mostly digital marketing? So you target to Lahore in the beginning, or
So, so look, back in the day, digital marketing was cheap, and there was no competition for it, right? You could get 5 cents, 6 cents per click, very easily without any problem, and you get the early adopters. And it's a way to track what's happening, right? You can do ROI calculations, whereas it's easier when it's digital. So yeah, so we started with Google, Facebook. And then obviously the market evolved. Instagram came up, Pinterest came up. Now TikTok is there, right? So we have to use all those sort of channels. And then influencers came up. That was something that didn't exist. Now we have to use influencers there. And then obviously we use the traditional media as well, which is your billboards, your television, your newspapers, and your flyers, brand ambassadors. So yeah, it's marketing is 360 degrees, right? But obviously we've had to adapt with the changing market, and wherever our customer segment is most likely available, and also cheapest to acquire, right? So that's how we started thinking about it.
wow. So what do you think is the difference? Obviously you're dealing with a developing world market, which is Pakistan, and a lot of people watching this will be in developed world, but what do you think is the difference in these markets and in growing it out? What's the pros and cons?
Yeah, look, it's very interesting, right? The biggest problem or the biggest difference is the per capita income, right? The second biggest is sort of the education level, or the familiarity with technology. So yeah, people might have smartphones, but can they really walk through an app and a user journey? It's tough, right? But coming back to the first point, which is just a very, very price sensitive consumer here, people have no spending power. So if you go abroad, people are willing to pay a certain premium for convenience. Family structures are different. Over here, every household has a nice way of saying it is, extra family members who are, not part of the workforce yet. So, have more time to do grocery and shopping for you. And, you also have domestic help, which is, which helps you sort of source what you want, whereas abroad you don't. So the family structure, the spending power, and the understanding of it all, right, is very, very different from what you have. And the biggest sort of indicator of that is sort of the amount you have to discount, or sort of the percentage of your orders that have to be discounted in developing markets for customer acquisition versus abroad, where if you can pitch the convenience, you can, there's a customer segment that's willing to pay a small premium for that convenience or that assortment or whatever service that you're willing to offer.
Yeah, I mean, this is the difference. I'm living in London now, and I was previously in Islamabad for a few years as well. And we had a servant that would take roughly, I think, what would be a servant paying like $100 a month. And then so when I came back to London, developed market, I was like, oh, I'm gonna lose a lot of my lifestyle, like
Yeah.
a driver, servant, etc. But I found that coming back into the digital apps of London is different than pre-apps. Like for instance, Uber, I'm using that as my driver, like a
Yeah.
chauffeur. And then I use a app called Laundry Heap that they collect my bag of laundry, and then they bring it back like, within 24 hours. And then that my laundry is done and folded. And for eating out, I'm using Uber Eats. Whereas in Pakistan, you wouldn't eat out as much because your servant would prepare the meal. It's
Yeah.
actually like healthier, and you're not concerned about his or her convenience as much as you are for yourself, right?
Yeah, exactly right. It's a nicer way of saying what I said, but yeah,
Uh,
it's true, right? You have people here that like I said, you're going home and you're like, oh shit, I then forgot to buy bread or eggs, right? There's a cost to you going all the way down, finding the nearest grocery store and getting it. Versus in Pakistan, I was just like, hey, can you please go and just hand the servant or the helper or some money and say, can you just go get this? And I don't have to go anywhere, right? So
And
yeah,
what's
it's a
this?
lifestyle.
What's the state of using credit cards and debit cards in Pakistan? Is it growing, or do you think at any point that it'll be there like digital currency? Because I in London, I don't carry any cash. Actually, the what I do is I have a mobile case. I put like 40 pounds in it for emergencies, and then I have my driving license, and that's it. But I never have to take out my cash. It's always contactless. I'm using Google Pay or Apple Pay. People be using in Pakistan. What percentage is it that's using debit credit cards, and what percentage are paying
Um,
by cash?
so yeah, just because I get very competitive about these things. So just in the spirit of competition, I've got sort of you can't see my phone, but
Yeah.
I've got the same thing. It's just it has three cards and that's it, right? So there's no cash whatsoever. So again, I think to understand a country like in the developing world, you have to understand that it's not really, you can't treat it as one country, right? It's two or three sort of different economic segments that behave very, very differently. So you've got, sort of the affluent class, which was emphasized by the Tim Hortons launch, where everyone was complaining that, your country on the verge of default, and why is everyone buying Tim Hortons coffee, right? Because there's that class of people who are price insensitive and, who can afford it, right? It may be 5%, it may be 10% of the population, but it's still, so because we have 250 million people, right? So even 10% is 25 million people. So it's not a small amount. So so you have those kind of people, right? Who are more digital savvy now. They carry their credit cards. We were out for lunch last week, and literally no one had cash, right? It was so bill splitting is a huge challenge because you can't people just don't carry cash in that segment anymore. For the lower income segment, you have these digital wallets like Jazz Cash and Easy Pesa, which have tens of millions of customers and monthly active users. Like it's not a small number; it's a huge number. It's easy for remitting money from city, urban to rural. It's easy, because they offer a convenience and a discount sometimes. So, but it's more peer to peer, right? Or less peer to merchant, but more peer to peer. So I think even though the majority of the economy is still cash driven, which honestly is more about not wanting to be documented versus then a lack of ability to use digital payments. And but a significant portion is now digital, whether it's debit credit card, but more than the debit credit card, it's these digital wallets have have more penetration and more users than debit credit cards.
So can you explain a couple of things? One is not wanting to be documented. Does that mean they don't want to show transactions going through their account because they don't want to be taxed? Is that the
Yes.
primary reason for not wanting to be
Yeah,
documented?
yeah. Anything that is digital at some point leaves a trail, which leaves you open to at any point if you go to a restaurant here and you offer to pay by credit card, those transactions immediately are under the tax umbrella, right? But if suppose you didn't want to pay the full amount of tax, which is ridiculous, right? Because you're not paying the tax; you pass it on to the consumer. It's not like the restaurant. Saves anything by not taking the credit card, but then their income level get visible and they don't want to do that. So yes, the idea is that you don't want to get documented because you don't want FBR or PRA or similar authority to find out.
So they can't, I mean, I see this in the UK as well, where you go into some restaurants, it says cash only, and I'm assuming that they want to avoid doing this tax thing. Now the government can't force everyone to start going digital and then be taxed and all this. Is that just that's just not going to happen, right?
So yeah, of course not, right? There's just no way they can force it. But another reason is cost, right? Some of these restaurants or these retailers are very low margin, and a credit card or a debit card transaction here is between 2 and 3 percent of your top line. So another big reason to use cash is the fact that you don't want to pay the acquirer that extra percentage, because you feel it really adds no value, or doesn't increase. Well, the only reason you do it is it will increase your customer base and increase your volume. And a lot of retailers feel that it really doesn't, or people are sort of inelastic between cash and credit card. They have both. So that's another reason why people decide
But
not to
you
use it.
are able to live in Lahore. I think you're living in Lahore without carrying cash, right? So you only take credit card with you.
Yeah. It's honestly, the reason to carry cash, yeah, there are very few retailers I go to that will not accept a digital payment. It's more, if I have to give someone money, or if I want to buy something off the street, street food, or from a street vendor, uh, which is sometimes, or I just want to pay cash for whatever reason, like.
And what do you think about WeChat? And do you think something like that could come into Pakistan where everything is digital and everyone's taking digital money? Or you think that's a
Yeah,
while
look,
away?
yeah, I think India is the good example to look at, right? They had a couple of digital plays uh, that got really big. So there are a couple of things, right? But the main thing, to move a country that significantly from cash to digital, you need some form of regulation or some form of government intervention, where the government just says, okay, from now on, any transaction above 5,000 rupees will not be cash, right? And that is something like that will drive a whole lot more digitization than leaving it to market forces. So or any like I said, you need to figure out, or in urban cities, there will not be any cash transaction, right? So which is what happened in India in the remonetization movement under the Modi regime, right? So yeah, it's not. Otherwise, it's a slow burn, right? It will take its time. Something drastic will have to happen in the market, like COVID, right? COVID drove a lot of digitization because people just didn't want to touch cash, right? They just, and they didn't want to go out, so e-commerce grew a lot. So yeah, but God forbid, it's you don't wish for such tragedies to happen just to drive digitization, right? So it's better to do it in a
I
more
mean,
natural, organic way.
what I do find about the Pakistani economy is there's a low trust in government, and governments change every couple of years. And so it's difficult to bring in a change. Like, for instance, China can bring in change quite easily because it's one party, one led. India is also relatively stable, 5-year governments. In Pakistan, it's like a quite low trust in government. So if you bring in something like this digitization and people start being documented, they don't trust their cash, the government. Would you say that's a fair point?
Yeah, I try to keep it apolitical, right? You never know, like, when the call might come. Um, yeah, it's a fundamental problem, right? There's no consistency of policy making. There's no consistency of implementation. One person does one thing and they get busted. The other person does the same thing, and they're overlooked for whatever reason, right? But generally, when new things are happening in the market, that's the best time, right? Innovation. Because when we launched e-commerce, that's where I think our governments have been consistently good. That they wait for it to happen, right? So they don't clamp down with regulation immediately. Like they say, okay, there's an e-commerce thing. Let's just pretend it's not happening and see where it goes, right? And then once there's some stability, or there's some direction, or some information on which direction it's going, then they come and the first thing they do is they invite you and they say, okay, look, explain this to us. Like, how can we help? And then the regulation comes later, and they're like, you know what, we want a piece of this business because we're the government, and we need it, right? But generally, for startups, for tech startups, all governments have been very tech friendly. Um, Overall, right, over the last whatever 10, 11 years, even before that, right, there's no tax on software export still, right? So tech industry is it's not exempted, but it's looked upon favorably and generously, and this has been consistent. Unfortunately, infrastructure is problematic, and yeah, overall, it just we wish there was more consistency, but it's not that bad.
But did you? What I looked at a market like Pakistan, it's per capita GDP is about $1,500, and there's a 220 million population. If you look at the U.S., it's the per capita GDP is $63,000, and there's 300 million population. What I learned over time is that it's a lot cheaper to start a startup in Pakistan than a lot of other countries, but then the money is outside. So did you already think about, when you built Cheetah, that once we prove it in Pakistan, we'll make it work in Saudi Arabia, or we'll go international with our product and service? Because once you built the software, you can scale it globally, right?
Yeah, look, with a pinch of salt, that's what our strategy was, right? That you prove it in one market, and then you see which market you can take it to for scale, for like you said, for diversity, for hedging, all of those good things, right? So that's definitely still the plan. That if we can get it profitable in this market, then let's see where else we can take it. And of course, if you look at which market to go in, the math is simple, right? You look at number of people, you look at per capita income, and you look at competition, right? And of course barriers to entry and regulation and all that, right? But with these first three metrics, you can pretty much decide how much of the market you can get, or how big your what people call TAM, which is the total addressable market, is, right? And so the math is fairly simple. And then obviously you look for adjacencies. Okay, I want to launch, let's say, Brunei is a very attractive market, but yeah, sitting in Pakistan, how am I going to get to Brunei? I don't know anyone there. So you look for markets that have less friction as well, and are adjacent, and where you can build some traction. But yeah, that's still the plan. Hopefully, we're close to break even on Cheetah and Swift as well. And as soon as we have that extra cash, we're gonna definitely put it to work in other markets.
And what advice would you have for people that are looking to start up, like want to get in the startup world? How would you go about it in Pakistan? Well, what are the advice?
Yeah, look, so a couple of things, right, which I have learned, and a couple of things that I've always believed in, right? So obviously, thinking evolves with with experience and with time. So the first thing is that look at your unit economics very carefully. There's these sort of top line chasing, hyper growth, hyper scale businesses that ignore unit economics. Those days are over, right? We've seen it all over the world, and more so in Pakistan, that it just doesn't work, right? You might be able to flip it once, or exit, but someone is going to be left holding the baby, and it's not going to be good. So that's sort of the first thing, right? To understand your unit economics very carefully. The other thing is,
Unit
you know
economics, you mean like the price that someone can afford or not afford?
yeah, so sort of your cost versus your revenue, right?
Okay.
Essentially your
So it's
gross revenue
something
and
that
your
like
gross
Uber and
profit.
these guys had an issue with, was they were charging less than they were
They
charging the
were paying.
customer less than it cost, and then
Yeah,
it helped, it got them in trouble eventually.
it got them in trouble eventually. Luckily they were able to get out of it, because they had a customer which was price inelastic, but they had to shut down a lot of markets, right? And we all heard what happened with the change of management, the change of CEO, and it was a new guy who came in and sort of did a turnaround. So that's the first thing, right? The other thing is that be very conscious of who your customer segment is. It's people don't pay. They want to be, the greediness is that I want to be everything for everyone. But no, you can't be, right? Are you going to serve the ultra upper class niche market? Are you going to serve the high volume low cost lower end of the market? Are you going to operate in the middle, the middle class who's seeking some sort of convenience? So again, when you ask someone that who's your target customer and where do you find them, the answer is always, oh, I want to serve everyone. I want to serve 18 to 40-year old, or 18 to 60-year old youth with an income level of this, and who's urban centered. Like, that's just, you can't be everything, because everyone does not have the same sort of buying patterns. So you can't be everything for everyone. So that's important to understand. The third thing is, choose your team, right? It's not a one-man job. You better have some good friends, and some highly competent, hardworking, passionate people who share your dream to sort of build this with, right? People, you can do it alone, but it's a lot more fun to have, a couple of good people around you to build it. And then, yeah, then it's just a question of being laser focused on what you want to do and execute it at high pace, with minimum sort of mistakes and and be agile, because not everything, I still, one of my favorite things is Mike Tyson thing where he goes, yeah, everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face, right? So yeah, so be ready to take a few punches and pivot or adapt to whatever happens in the market. And yeah, it sounds really simple when you say it, right? But it's a grind and it's effort, and there are dark days and obviously there's some great days as well. But this whole discount driven unit economics debate where is, I think those days are well and truly gone. There's just no capital available for anything like that nonsense anymore, right? You better have a real business with real customers with a very solid path to profitability, because there's no endless amounts of cash available anymore.
And what do you find is the difference between working in a consulting company like the McKinsey, where you've got a solid paycheck, and then doing startups? What have you found the difference, and yeah, what's the pros and cons?
So yeah, so that's an interesting question, right? And I realized this very quickly. Sort of the it's great working at one of these big conglomerates, right? Because the people around you are just fantastic, right? They have the highest, the best talent, and really nice people, and the learning is immense, and it's just a great environment to be in. Um, my biggest problem were two things, right? One is the sort of impact you create is always questionable, right? Because you serve a client and you tell them, and or you're selling shampoo or Pepsi bottles. You know, what's the real impact that you're trying to create, right? Um, whereas whereas when you're sort of building an entrepreneurial venture, you're providing jobs, you're creating productivity, you're putting people to work, and you're sort of increasing the economy locally, right? There's no import driven stuff like everything you try to do locally. The biggest, my biggest gripe was that I didn't own my time anymore. I was at the mercy of my manager, who was at the mercy of his manager or her manager, who was at the mercy of the client, who was at the mercy of his executive or her executive, who was at the mercy of their board. If it's a public limited company, then was at the mercy of shareholders, right? So you were in this, in this sort of hamster's wheel where you're just stuck. And if I wanted to go have lunch with a friend, like on a random Monday or a random Wednesday, I couldn't do it, right? Because I had to ask my manager for permission. And in the startup world, if someone wants to go out for lunch, they'll just say, okay, hey, look, I'll put in the extra hours, I'll get the work done, but can I just have this time for myself, right? And it's the so where it's a lot more output driven rather than okay, I need you strictly for this time at this place, right? So I really enjoyed the flexibility of the startup world versus sort of the rigor and the sort of the high discipline and the well, accountability is not a bad thing, but sort of the extra accountability of working at corporates. And the
And
learning is very different, right? Sorry, just to finish up. The learning at startups, you get a lot more responsibility because because when you're at a corporate, they have a specific role for you, and and you're sort of circled in and say that okay, this is what your role is, this is what you can do. Whereas when you're sort of more at a dynamic startup or at a dynamic sort of growth company, you have to figure out what to do, and you get a lot more responsibility, you learn a lot more, you get to do a lot more, and you get to impact a lot more lives and a lot more things than you would.
and then when you raised money for Cheat Day, how did you go about it? Was it some friend or family friend that help put in the first paychecks, or
Yeah,
how
yeah. The first money is always, what everyone calls the friend, family, and fools round, right? So yeah, you go to your friends and all the bravado you can muster. Say, hey, just I'm gonna change your life. I'm going to change the world, and you need people to believe in you. And then, then you show some traction and you say, hey, look, I told you I'm going to do this. And then, once the numbers start coming in, then you can have more, sort of fact-based conversations. And, then you can talk unit economics, you can talk growth strategy. You can say, okay, look, this has worked, this has not worked. I need money for X, Y, Z. And you have some credibility, and like I said, then you can talk to outside people, with some numbers and something to show, rather than just stick slides that show that, oh, I'm so great that I built this and I did that and I did that for them, right? Where it's all about, and now then it becomes about the business. Then sort of we followed a slightly different strategy where we did not raise institutional capital. We went more to family offices and sort of high net worth individuals, because we wanted to build a real business which was not going to be one of these discounting, uh, discount economy driven businesses, right? We wanted to build something real, so we needed people to really understand our vision and what we stood for, rather than saying that, oh, you have 1 year, I'll fund you for 1 year, and 1 year you deliver 4x growth, so then you can go to this VC and raise more money, then you deliver another 4x growth, then you go to the next VC. We wanted to do things like positive unit economics, and at every level of scale, we actually save money and reduced our burn, rather than increasing burn for the next scale jump, right? Slightly different strategy.
great. Yeah, no, that's also I think, look, Ahmed is one of the sharpest guys you'll meet in Pakistan in terms of startups, and that applies basically everywhere that he goes. But he's very well connected in the region as well. So, what would be the pros and cons for people looking to invest in Pakistan that you think that you can advise and give that?
Look, I think it's a great market, right? Obviously, we've seen some problems recently, but there are always temporary cycles that every economy goes through. We have a huge market where we have a population that is young and tech savvy, right? And these millennials and Gen Z are a different breed of consumers that people need to finally understand, and I think most people do now. And then obviously there's the generation that's coming after them. I don't know what their name is yet, but they're going to be classified as something. So there's access to a talent pool and also a consumption market, right? So that's one of the biggest reasons. The other thing is that it's just such an open opportunity that there's no competition. People have not really invested in technology businesses yet. E-commerce penetration is still hovering around 1.5%. In India, it's 9%. In the developed world, it's 14, 15%. So so where we are today, there's a 15x growth, or at least a 10x growth that is like right there for the taking, right? With the right model and sort of the right execution, that you can take like that, right? Just like I said, because of comparable markets being much higher than we are. So those are really two big, right? And then we always talk about the talent pool. We have we have access to good tech talent, and we have access to hardworking sort of people who understand and who can hustle, and who can get this stuff done, right? Our math skills, our analytical skills are also pretty good, right? Okay, not to say that other countries don't have it, but we just have a lot more of this sort of demographic, or this description, or profile of people available. So yeah, come for the market, come for the ease of doing business, where the government is like I said, leaves you to do things the way you want to, and is very supportive of foreign investments coming in, right? Um, and yeah, and come for the talent, and there's and as the economy starts rebuilding, there's going to be a huge consumer market to consume everything that people are making as well, right? Look at China, look at India. Yes, they were very big on exports, right? But as your exports grow, as your sort of productivity increases, what you realize is you've developed a beautiful domestic market of people who are now earning that money and now want to spend it locally. And so there's that opportunity available here. And at that scale, there are very few frontier markets, who have that size and scale potential, left in the world. So I think it's
Yeah.
an interesting journey ahead.
No, the opportunity is huge, and that's great. And if anyone wants to connect with you, how could they do that? Because yeah, there might be people interested in opening up in the Pakistani market or just for talent.
Yeah.
How could they connect? Is it
So yeah, so the last thing I just want to reemphasize is that there's no competition, right? What for me, the toughest thing in any business I've been in has been dealing with competition, right? Because people come, they can compete on price, they can compete on service, they can compete on network. Whereas in Pakistan, anything you decide to do, there is very little competition, to do it. So you pretty much have, monopolistic opportunities. So yeah, I'm fairly visible on social media. I'm on LinkedIn, I'm on Twitter, I'm on Instagram. Facebook as well. So yeah, wherever you guys want, my sort of handle is usually Ahmed K79 or Ahmed HK79. But I think you can put it in the description.
perfect?
And yeah, please feel free to reach out. It'll be good to have conversations. I'm very keen to learn more. And having done all of this good stuff, I was discussing with Amir as well that but what's next, right? Is AI the future now? Is Web 3.0 the next thing? Because crypto came and sort of has gone. So glad we missed that. But what's next, right? And would love to understand what people are thinking and where their thoughts lie. And then if there's anything, of course, we can help with. Happy to contribute.
Yeah, Ahmed Khan, you're not going to meet many people with his experience in the market. The equivalent of Amazon, which is Daraz.pk, he co-founded, over a decade ago. The equivalent of Uber Eats in Pakistan is huge there as well. Cheetah, he's co-founded, and then Swift. And then he just knows the market inside out. So if you want to get in touch with him, do so. I'll put it in the show notes, and then we'll take it from there. This has been AmirAnzur.com.